Ladies and gentlemen, woo! Yeah, I know, right? Well, we're going to be discussing the Dark Side of the Ring Plane Ride from Hell's episode. It dropped earlier this week, and as you can see here, I got the video, so I'll be providing you guys with a link for this, because if you want to watch it, you can efficiently get through it on 2x speed. There's not a whole lot to it, and they included all of the commercial breaks. So realistically, if you have 20 minutes and you're pretty interested in the source material, go ahead and watch it. You know what? But it is, in fact, and I got it paused right on the first image that you see when you pull up the video, it's marked with the fucking stamp of failure. It's Vice. Vice is the same outlet who purposely pilloried and misrepresented the opinions and the thoughts of Jordan Peterson, okay? Tried to slander him as some kind of a misogynist by saying, oh, women only want to get fucked because they wear makeup, okay? And they shouldn't belong in the workplace. And then it took a dutiful employee to release the full unedited version to just show how corrupt Vice are. These are the same fucking people at Vice who gave a voice to a fucking murderer who was avoiding police capture, and Michael Reinhold, okay? You guys remember, he was the one who fucking shot a Trump supporter in Portland because, oh my god, he was stalking me, and then the fucking security footage showed he was actually stalking the cat he shot in a parking garage waiting to shoot somebody, okay? He was 100% Antifa, by the way, but Vice gave him a voice and a platform and helped aid and abet a fucking murderer, by the way. And this is also the same Vice who thinks that armed forces are being taken over by white supremacists and neo-Nazis, okay? So do you think Vice is going to be fair and open and honest with any of the interviews that are given here? No, absolutely not. Are they going to be using deceptive camera tricks and deceptive editing in order to make up their own idea on this situation? Of fucking course they are. So, you know what? I thought it would be just nice to go ahead and break out the nice robes. We got the gold, we got the chains, we got the rhinestones, we got the Ray-Bans, we got a really douchey getup. But by the end of this, guys, you're gonna figure out why I think that this is a total fucking smear job and an attempt by Vice to get back some relevancy, because nobody gave a fuck about this episode, and by the end of it, you two are also gonna have a hard time trying to keep these gators down, which you can't see because the camera framing is a little bit off, and we can't quite put my fucking foot up there because, you know what, hey, I don't need a wiki feet page. Anyways, so what are we talking about here? If you guys are completely out of the loop on this one, I don't specifically like to talk about, you know, individual sporting events if I don't watch them, okay? I watched through this Dark Side of the Ring episode, like I said, 2x speed, a couple of times, just to make sure I get everything chronologically right, because this breakdown that we have here, I could play it and we can, you know, go through it frame by frame, step by step, but this video would be 9 hours long, and I did a previous take on this, which was just getting long in the tooth and rambly, even though this intro is, but hey, you know what, we shall dispense with that. This write-up here is pretty good. I'll try to fill in some of the blanks, get to all of the high-profile information that is out there, and ask some of the pertinent questions, because remember, this is Vice. They have a specific target, and if they can go ahead and try to pillory a bunch of straight white men who are, you know what, a little bit older, that is their cause du jour, and they're just a bunch of propagandists. And do I think that there's going to be a season 4 of Dark Side of the Ring? Well, there might be, but I don't think the fallout of this one, any of the wrestlers are going to be showing up. Just the desperate ones, just the PJ Polacos, the Just Incredibles of the world. You know what? He can film a little interview on his lunch break from Olive Garden. So what is the Plane Ride from Hell? If you guys are outside of the pro wrestling sphere, this is an event that happened in 2002, okay? Keep that in mind. This is 19 fucking years old at the time, okay? There were lawsuits that came out of this. There's a bunch of tall tales, and they Vice here only cherry-picked a couple of the more, you know, notable events, but they're missing several very high-profile ones, okay? Like what led up to Michael Hayes getting his fucking mullet chopped off by X-Pac, okay? There's rumors, and there's also some other stories there that he also tried to put his dick and balls on Linda McMahon's shoulder. That wouldn't have flown very well. I know, weird turn of phrase, but that story's out there. There's also some stuff about Curt Hennig trying to wrestle some people out there as well. Like, there's other stories that they could have covered as well, but they had 3 targets in mind when it came to this one, because there's 3 very high-profile events, 4 if you talk about the Lesnar Mr. Perfect wrestling match, which is one of the first things that comes up here. But the way that they frame it and the people that they interview, it's more or less just, like I said, trying to be a smear piece. But the plane ride from hell, okay, going back to that, okay, this was the European Tour in 2002, okay, the Fed was over there just packing houses, because even in the dying days of WCW, they were still pulling 5 digits for the crowd, okay, they were getting 12, 13, 14, even like 16,000 people to show up, even when the product stateside was absolute shit, and they could barely get 5,000 people to show up for a Nitro taping. Running a house show in the UK, though, that was big bucks. And then especially once you consolidated all the forces from ECW and WCW, buying them out, you had a huge stacked roster. It was one of the most talented rosters, one of the most over rosters of all time, that Vince McMahon, because he's petty, completely fucking buried, and has led to this fucking absolute barren wasteland of wrestling content all the way up until 2019 with the creation of All Elite Wrestling. But anyways, the people that they interviewed for this, you guys have to keep in mind, it's very important to note that none of them work for WWE, okay? And then the people who they try to smear in this, at the time, worked for WWE, with the exception of Goldust. But he gets off relatively unscathed in this one, okay? Because the 2 people, as you can tell by the thumbnail there, that really got affected hardest by this was Tommy Dreamer and Ric Flair. So, this was a chartered flight, SportJet, okay? So to get them all across for the European Tour, they were over there. And they do this every year when there isn't a pandemic going on, okay? So they'll go from country to country, bringing in huge houses for just running a regular old house show. So going on for a month, they figured, hey, we'll just charter a plane service, because when it's a lot different, because the talent has to look after their own travel expenses and their own accommodation, which is a conversation to be had. AEW runs a much better model, but that's another discussion for another day. But when they're over in Europe, or when they're over in Saudi Arabia, my friend, trying to put together the next Goldberg versus Bobby Lashley match, okay, or have Roman Reigns against Brock Lesnar, we pay them multi-million dollars to run elevated house show. Fucking retarded. But anyways, they go over there, they make fucking 9 digits worth of money, and they look after all the travel to get there, because that would be retarded. Oh yeah, pal, you got a booking in Jeddah, okay? Oh, we'll see you on Sunday. No, they at least take care of you. And then when they do the European Tour, they have for as long as they've been doing a European Tour. So chartered a flight service and got them from place to place. So after InsurreXtion, the third of, there's a lot of places out there that said, oh yeah, yearly running of a UK pay-per-view. There's only been 3 UK pay-per-views in history, okay? There was SummerSlam 93, okay? Oh, I'm sorry, that's 92, my mistake. It was just, the biggest crowd that they've ever had, okay? Don't be fooled by Hulk Hogan. Oh, brother, we had like 93 million people at the Silver Dome, brother. And I was like, no, it was closer to 60, maybe 70. And then in 1998, you had Capital Carnage in London. And then you also had InsurreXtion, which was the tail end of the European Tour. And then after that, they hopped on the plane and they were heading back to the States, because guess what? They had Monday Night Raw to tape that very fucking day that they would have arrived. So you got that 7-hour plane ride ahead of you. So you got to use it appropriately to rest, relax, and fucking celebrate a very successful European Tour. Unfortunately for them, their plane got delayed due to inclement weather that they would have been anticipating in Connecticut when they were to arrive. So they were anticipating, oh, okay, cool, we'll wait it out for half an hour. And then half an hour turned to an hour. And then it turned to 2. And eventually ended up being 7 fucking hours stuck on the tarmac. Now, what do a bunch of, I don't know, wrestlers in 2002 decide to do for fun? This is a lot different than the workers today, because everybody and their mother on AEW side, okay, or if they manage to hop on, what is that, Up, Down, one of the New Day kids, one of their YouTube channels, they're all gamers, they're all streamers, they're all on social media in some form or fashion. They don't really party like the boys back in the day would. So, as they would, because you have the likes of Ric Flair, You had the acolytes on board. You had Taker on board. Guess what they were going to do? They were going to drink. They were going to drink like fishes that had been out of the water for a fucking week. They went through not one liquor car, brother. They went through two. And then they got to the third and polished that off. Woo-woo. Now, it's never substantiated as to what they mean by liquor cart. And because most of the fucking roster was on this chartered plane, it's probably not an overwhelmingly incredible amount of liquor for wrestlers. I'm speaking for the average person. Oh yeah, they would have been dead 3, 4, 5, 8 times over, but these are workers. In the early 2000s, guys that broke in the fucking early 80s, if you've ever heard a shoot interview from anybody who was working at that time, and especially, these are the people that also worked in ECW, okay, the only place that, the only way that you would leave ECW is if you got signed by WCW or the Fed, or you'd leave going to rehab, okay, that was the prevailing opinion, and that ended up proving incredibly true, especially on the flight itself. So, you know, they were grounded for an additional 7 hours. They went through 3 fucking drink carts, and then that startled one of the centerpieces of this. Okay, Heidi Doyle. She was one of the flight attendants on this flight, and it's a little bit sketchy, but this is just me extrapolating. This could be wrong, but she would have been one of the hostesses for the entire fucking chartered event, but she was on the plane ride from hell. That's what's important, okay? And she ended up striking up a conversation with Ric Flair, who is, you know what? Okay, you guys know who Ric Flair is, okay? There's nobody on earth who doesn't know who Ric Flair is, okay? And it's very well known, the dude's a womanizer, but he's never, at least to my knowledge, okay, ever been charged or ever been accused of doing anything excessively inappropriate. Okay, some funny gags, some decent ribs, but never anything illegal, except for this instance. Except for this one. But we'll get to that, because there's a couple of other events, because we're going to go through this quasi-chronologically. Okay, so you have the calm before the storm, which is, yes, that 7-hour delay, which doubled the time that this flight would have taken. Okay, so you have testimony from Terry Runnels, who, if you were watching the product at the time, from the beginning of the Attitude Era all the way through the early 2000s, she was one of the backstage presences. She initially broke in with Goldust, who was her husband at the time. She ended up working with, the Hardy Boys, Perry Saturn. Everybody has glowing reviews of her. Nobody has a bad thing to say about Terry, and she knows how the business works. So that's why Vice put her up first, because she knows how the business works, okay? You do something retarded, okay? One of the guys in the back decides that, let's just say, I'll just pick this random example out there. You know what? You get somebody like, say, Brock Lesnar. We'll jump ahead a little bit. Okay, so at the time, Terry was working as a backstage interviewer, asking those stupid questions, holding up the microphone to the talent, and then as soon as they cut on an interview, she hears her name being called by Brock Lesnar in an adjacent room, right? Okay, it's just Lesnar and Goldust in the room, okay? So questions are abound. It's like, because of what is eventually coming, and knowing of all of Goldust's troubles at the time until he cleaned up his act in the early 2010s, did he orchestrate this because he's really missing his fucking ex-wife or what? Who knows? But eventually, Lesnar pulls a flashing attempt. Terry just looks, no-sells it, walks away, because that's the best way you handle that. It's like, what do? Just stand there and laugh at fucking Brock Lesnar? I don't think so. That's the best way to do it, and just completely no-sell it. And then Dustin, he must have had a fucking, if you've heard any of the backstage stories at this time, I think that he set him up, okay? But anyways, yeah, went out and said, it's just no-sell it. Don't worry about it, okay? It's like, that was wrong. And it's like, yeah, Lesnar was doing a whole bunch of crazy stuff at the time. His initial run from 2002 until, when did he leave? Yeah, WrestleMania 20, so 2004. It was a tumultuous time for him. Let's just go ahead and say that. But we'll get into more of his tumultuosity. I don't think that's a word, but it will be right now. So Terry was set up as being, oh my God, look at how bad that these wrestlers are. They indoctrinate this poor woman. She knows the business, okay? And that was the fucking style of the time. Stop trying to moralize with today's standards, things that happened in the past. Not to say that everything was good on this flight, and I'm not even trying to castigate Heidi or her story here, okay? Because maybe all the stuff that she's claiming did happen, but of all the interviews that were given, okay, nobody's on the payroll of the Fed, okay? But Heidi Doyle, was the only one who came back for a second interview, okay? Because everything else, like just the framing and the background of these interviews, they all had a consistent theme. And then about halfway, 3/4 through the episode itself, Heidi's shown again in more interviews. Her demeanor has significantly changed. She's dressed differently, and there's a different backdrop. So maybe the producers thought that they had something here, and they thought that they could just bury Ric Flair, because this, like I said, the last 2/3 of this is very much an attempt to smear Ric Flair. Okay, very much so. But again, she's not really making any calls for him to be canceled. Just leaving that up to the fucking leftists that are out there in the journalism and fandom of professional wrestling in the year 2021, unfortunately. But yeah, with that said, guys were just drunk out of their fucking tree, right? Okay, this 7 hours, nothing else to do. Let's get fucked up on pills and booze, because you're a worker at that time, okay? It was the style of the time. By this point, however, many of the wrestlers had already gotten drunk after the 7-hour delay once the plane finally took off. During this point, many wrestlers had prescription meds, some of which were used on the flight. Halcyon and a whole bunch of Percocets, and we got other painkillers, and we got Halcyon or Triple H bums, were used to help people sleep. They were also used to get a rib the marks pass out. That was one of the things that JR talked about, okay, because he's another one of the figures that are overarching on this, because he was, okay, head of talent relations, so he was in charge of keeping the boys in place. He pops up a couple of times on this, but outside of a couple of events, he did his job incredibly poorly. He fesses up for that, and because there wasn't a Plane Ride from Hell 2 or another big incident like this, okay, after this, there was like Chris Benoit and that type of shit, but no event like this regarding the boys being complete assholes causing a ruckus to this level, okay? Sure, there was some shit, but that was handled elsewhere. So I think JR conducted himself very well at this point. But he was also describing this H-bombing, and this is just giving you the mentality of these fucking guys at this time, right? Because if you got fucking essentially roofied, but you would have very lax control of your motor functions, and then you'd also start foaming from the mouth, and the guys thought that was a good rib, eh? And it's like, oh, fucking Christ. Yeah. And then this is where they pick up the Michael Hayes part of this stuff, right? Okay, he was one of the people who was H-bombed during the flight. So then he went up to Bradshaw, who had gigged the night before at the InsurreXtion pay-per-view. So he had a fucking cut mark, okay, so he was all stitched up, or he had the fucking gauze on his head. Michael Hayes thought that it would be a fun thing to do at the time. This is the guy who is like the #1 agent in WWE right now. I'm not trying to go after him or anything. I'm just letting you know that this guy faced no fucking repercussions for basically the inciting incident to the Plane Ride from Hell. Just saying, went over to Bradshaw, thought it would be a fucking decent time, because even at this point, Bradshaw in the fucking locker room was a total menace, but more on him for another day. I went over there and fucking broke him back open hard way, fucking knocked him in the head. Bradshaw was asleep at this time, so it was like, what the fuck is he doing? So Bradshaw hops out of his chair and fucking just open hand palm strikes fucking Michael Hayes, knocks him out. And then, yeah, once he, collects himself, he goes back to his chair, passes out again. Like I said, he's H-bombed. But at least, cognizant enough, because one of the old Freebirds there, obviously, he has built up quite a bit of tolerance. So he at least had enough function to go over there and do something completely fucking stupid. So he went back there and then eventually, passed out for the rest of the flight. X-Pac being more of a follower and just trying to ride the wave of emotions of fuck Michael Hayes. Nobody likes him in the back. You know what? Seeing that old mullet pulled back in a ponytail and decided, I got some scissors. We're going to make something happen here. Snipped off that ponytail, saved it up, and then eventually when they went to TV the next day, posted it on the locker room door. Everybody cheered. It apparently got one of the biggest pops on the plane. Also, yes, and then this is probably the story. If you've heard of the Plane Ride from Hell, you've probably heard of this specific story right here. Also on the flight, Mr. Perfect, Curt Hennig, one of the best workers of all time. Probably the best guy to have never won a championship. Okay, he won the IC, but he didn't win the world title in the Fed. That was mostly because Hogan was on top and he wasn't losing anybody, Brother Jack. But regardless, Mr. Hennig, yes, that was his WCW name. No, Mr. Perfect decided to pick a fight with Brock Lesnar. Smart, right? Yeah, no, anyways, so back about this one. Hennig, who has instigated more fights than I have digits to really count, all the way back in the 80s, all in the AWA days as well, when he was breaking in. It was like, this guy's been pulling pranks for fucking ever. So what did he decide to do to Brock Lesnar? Brock was asleep. He put a huge amount of shaving cream on his head and decided that he needed a new hat. So he just decided to fucking slap it down, spraying it everywhere. And if you didn't do that to a Division I wrestler, the story would have ended there with maybe a couple of sissy fists being thrown. But this is an NCAA Division I All-American National Champion. Brock fucking Lesnar. The guy who would go on and capture the UFC's heavyweight fucking championship. That Brock Lesnar. Pre-cock tattoo. This fucking spry 20-something, okay? Guess what, brother? It's time to shoot. It resulted in a brawl. Lesnar shooting the fucking double leg, ended up picking him up. Various items were broken. Even a row of seats were completely removed. During this point, one of the wrestlers took on the PA, proclaiming, "We are all going to die," because they ended up at the emergency exit, and Lesnar was trying to push Mr. Perfect through it. You could understand the fucking notable temperature in the room rising over the idea that even though it would have never happened because it's as structurally sound as the rest of the fuselage, but if they were going to create any adjarment and they were going to depressurize the cabin, they would have killed everybody. And you know what? If they would have dented it or made it structurally unsound, you're flying over the fucking Atlantic Ocean. Where are you going to land exactly? Exactly. Not a fucking great idea, but these guys are drunk as shit, so everything seems like a great idea. And now we got to go back to the Terry and Goldust situation here. So, okay, after everybody realized that, fuck, we almost died because those two 6'4" fucking slabs of meat were banging against each other, trying to kill us all. Maybe we should just get some fucking shut-eye because we got Raw to tape in a couple of hours. So everybody was asleep except for Goldust, who thought that this was a fucking prime opportunity to hop on the PA and start singing "Pledging My Love" to his ex-wife. Why do you think I kind of thought that he set up Lesnar? He's not over her. He's really not over her. This became probably the single most cringy fucking thing on planet Earth, but he was drunk. He had demons, okay? I understand it. Still think you're a grown fucking man. You should be able to, make better decisions to it. And public displays of affection on a plane ride that has already gone so fucking south doesn't really seem that great. So this was one of the two instances because JR came back to try to break up the Hennig-Lesnar brawl, which eventually also involved a pilot coming back because it's like, hey, we're trying to fly this and you two fucking mongoloids are just rocking the plane. So if you could just calm down for a minute, that'd be great. This prompted JR to go over to Goldust and be like, okay, pal, we're live. You need to go ahead and sit down and give back the nice lady the PA system because, hey, buddy, you couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. By God. And Terry, once again, was just like, okay, don't sell this. Brother's drunk, and we'll fucking move on from here. You know what? I've almost come accustomed to just wearing these shades this entire time. Anyways, so now we're going to get to the Nature Boy and everything he was up to. Brother, everybody knows about Ric Flair, brother. Limousine riding, jet flying, kiss stealing, wheeling, dealing, robe wearing, nothing underneath it, son of a gun. Woo! He also loves to do the helicopter with his big old fucking Nature Boy schlong just fucking spinning in the aisle. It apparently pops the boys. It's probably funny, but, a little bit unsettling when it's a 50-something in a fucking purple robe going down the aisles going, woo, 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 swiveling his hips like he has an imaginary fucking hula hoop, but whatever, they're wrestlers, it's 2002, it's fucking insane. Of course something like that is going to happen. Well, this humored the other wrestlers. It made Doyle uncomfortable because they had struck up some kind of a chord, okay, at some point in time. Rare was flirting with anything that would presumably have a vagina and a pulse, so he was already laying the groundwork, okay? And then add liquor, instant asshole, right? And this is where all of the controversy is coming from, obviously. So, according to Doyle, okay, recalled being in the galley at the time when Flair blocked her way out, making unwanted advances towards her. This went on for several minutes. According to Doyle, in the past, Flair stated there was no truth to those allegations. We'll get to his statement after this, after we do the recap, which is already quite long in the tooth anyways, but you know, it's going better than the first take. I do appreciate that. Anyways, so this was apparently backed up by Rob Van Dam, and if you know anything about Rob Van Dam, and if there were pills and booze out there, okay, the dude lives by the green. Totally by the green, the 420 lifestyle, as it were, as the kids might say. He was probably stoned out of his gourd, and he's about the only one who could corroborate this whatsoever. And then Doyle said that after giving back up, okay, this was at the time that Goldust was on the PA system. Okay, he was told to give it up, pal, go back to sleep. And apparently, he got back on the PA system and told Flair to knock it off. So again, okay, this might have been presented out of chronological order, but it's another one of those instances of Vice just kind of playing fast and loose with their editing. Okay, because there's a lot of real heartstring tugging emotional pleas here by just letting the camera linger just a little bit too long on somebody before another screen transition, because there's more jump cuts in this than a minute of Monday Night Raw. You can kind of tell by the people who are not really accustomed to doing interviews, okay, specifically Heidi. She's just rephrasing the question that the interviewer poses to them. And every once in a while, if Vice thinks that they hit an emotional home run, they'll just subtitle the question that they have at the bottom. But oftentimes, Heidi's just answering a question, and she's coming up with words on the fly because you can see her eyes, and they're darting back and forth, trying to figure out and trying to access her memories. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with that. But like I said, she was more sincere in the first half of this than she was in the second half, when presumably it was a reshoot, or they came back to her. It happened after the fact, because the change and the subject matter, because she was talking about everything. She was talking about how excited she was for the entire chartering process to finally be over, because it was the first flight that she came back to after giving birth to her child, and it was the longest time she was ever away from her kids. So okay, obviously, you know what, you have a newborn kid at home, you're excited to get back to that. But she was talking about everything, and her demeanor completely changed in the second half of that. But anyways, that was the story about Flair. So he's denied it. She just thought that, oh, okay, there should have been this was just about verbatim what she had to say about the situation. I thought there should have been more repercussions for what happened at the plane ride from hell, but then she found out that there were fines, and there were in fact consequences. She's not calling for anybody to be canceled, okay? Like I said, that's her story. She wants to tell it. I'm just saying that there's conflicting events, and that the fucking scummy media and the scummy fans out there are really trying to push something here. But anyways, another central figure and somebody else who was smeared pretty well by this, but kind of got off scot-free, is Scott Hall, okay? People know about his substance abuse issues, even when he was brought in 2002, and they came in, Kevin Nash, Hulk Hogan, Scott Hall, the original 3 NWO members came in February of that year, of 2002, and this happened in May of 2002, and even as trashy as WCW was at the end of their days, they were running that last call Scott Hall gimmick, where he'd come down with a fucking beer and he'd act like he was drunk because Vince Russo is a talentless hack. But everybody knew that what you seen on the screen was also a shoot behind the curtain. So they knew that they had problems, but you could fucking throw a dart and hit somebody who had problems in the back room. And thankfully, this is mostly just been fucking cleaned up. It's a completely different culture in the back room. Everybody knew that he had problems. They just didn't realize how bad it was. But Scott Hall, apparently, I mean, he claims that he doesn't remember anything that happened on the flight. He alleges that he was H-bombed, dropped a halcyon tablet in one of his drinks, and he's completely out of it. And Doyle remarked, and she remembered that Hall brought her in close enough to just break the buttons on her shirt and said, "I'm going to lick your pussy." And then at that point, Doyle had enough. Okay, we don't know if this is chronologically what happened. You had the Flair situation, but then somebody who's clearly out of it saying, I'm going to lick your pussy was the breaking point. Again, that's fair, okay? And she stayed back in the galley, and everybody else could go fuck themselves. If they wanted, food, if they wanted drinks, that was somebody else's problem. She had had enough of this situation. There was a lawsuit, and we'll get to that shortly here, because we're just about done with the recap of the story, but already got paid, okay? There was no criminal charges filed. She thought that there should have been more repercussions, but then found out that there were repercussions, and she got a big fat check from Vince McMahon, who's notably absent. He was on the plane, okay? He was there. He knew all of this stuff was happening. But if you also know a little bit about Vinnie Mac's history and his desire to be one of the boys as well, taking finishers in the bar before the steroid policy comes in, like, he should have done something. Ultimately, this is his company. It's going to reflect on him one way or another. These stories were going to get out, so he paid some hush money out there to some people to just fucking take it and go, because if that civil lawsuit goes out there again, especially at the height of the Fed's popularity, it's obviously like the tail end of it, but they were still profitable and they were still watchable for a couple more years after this. That would be about the tail end. Okay. But still, okay, so the consequences that were eventually handed out because, Hall was completely fucked at the end of this. Just Incredible had to put him in a wheelchair and wheel him out through customs. And it's like, oh, my friend here, he's just, he's got a medical condition and he's just a little bit too droopy at this point. Ha ha ha. Yeah, plane full of wrestlers and you got one crippled kid. I don't fucking get it, but okay, whatever. Hall got cut, okay, because they thought that a better place for him would be at home. They also sent him off to a bunch of different rehabs, which Vice didn't put in there, but if you watch the really excellent 30 for 30 put on by ESPN, yes, ESPN used to produce stuff before they went completely degenerate woke. If you want to check that out, that's great. But if you want a happy ending to that story, also check out the resurrection of Jake the Snake and the great work that Diamond Dallas Page did with Scott Hall and with Jake Roberts. That'll close the book on that situation. And that's also why Scott Hall, okay, I don't know why they didn't afford any of the other coverage and sympathy that Scott Hall got, okay, because he cleaned up his life. And within, the past 5 years, Ric Flair's gone through several really troubling health scares, and he's cleaned up his life quite a bit. But hey, he's one of the big fishes out there, and if they can slander Ric Flair, that means clicks, that means rage baiting, that means canceling another straight white old male. Okay, so that's Vice's cause du jour. So Hall was fired, Hennig was cut. And, of course, Vice. You would have thought they would have took a shot at a dead guy, but maybe the guys who they were interviewing and the guys who this entire thing was centered around didn't want to let that fly. And then also, okay, so what happened to Goldust? Okay, he's a pretty central figure to this story. They were going to cut him too, but he just ended up getting a fine. Okay, Dustin Rhodes, Goldust, he would eventually leave the company and then clean himself up, yes, by the 2010s, and unfortunately had that really embarrassing run in TNA where he was Black Rain wearing the fucking trash bag. But everybody does stupid things from now and again, like singing to your ex-wife. Like, I can't fucking get over that. That's so stupid. And then here's some more shit. So that was the consequence. That was the end of it. And again, Doyle came back. Heidi Doyle, the flight attendant, who was very traumatized by this. Like I said, I don't know if her story's true or not. It doesn't really run in the history of Ric Flair. Like, he hasn't really faced any sort of the similar charges or accusations of sexual assault like this. Like saying that Ric Flair pinned her against the wall and tried to get her to touch the little H in the back corner, only for it to be broken up at the last second. And this went on for minutes at a time. I don't really know, okay? And the only people who do know are Ric Flair and Heidi, and it looks like Ric Flair is going to be telling his side of the story at the end of this. But Ric Flair, charges, fines at the time, was he cut? No. Why is that? Well, Ric Flair's Ric Flair, after all, okay? In that business, it's like Hogan and Flair, okay? 1 and 1A. Okay, no two ways about it. So he was a high-level made man, and you listen to the way that Flair, even now, talks about Vince McMahon. It makes total fucking sense why he kind of skated on this situation. So somebody else I'm leaving out of all of the different interviews, and kind of the recap does here as well, is Tommy Dreamer's role in this. Okay, and his takes are basically the same takes that I've been making. And what happened to him? Well, he's been suspended by Impact Wrestling. Yes, he's working for Impact, and yes, that's old TNA, and they're still in fact around. And because, I don't know, the world is fucked, and they are owned by a Canadian corporation, so that makes a little bit more sense. Impact Wrestling has suspended Tommy Dreamer following controversial comments. Free speech, huh? Free speech is free, right? Yeah. Or even deceptively edited video. I'm not leaving Vice off the hook because I know their history. Everybody knows their history, or they should know their history. He made on Thursday's Dark Side of the Ring episode, in a statement which obtained by John Pollock of Post Wrestling, Impact said, "We are aware of Mr. Laughlin's," oh my god, they're using the shoot names, "We're shooting here, cowboy," comments on Dark Side of the Ring. The views expressed by him in the interview are completely unacceptable. Statements expressed, completely unacceptable. Oh, okay, cool. We can confirm Mr. Laughlin was suspended this morning with immediate effect, pending further action. Yep, thanks to the lockdown, they shut down his indie House of Hardcore, if I do remember correctly. And now these fucking tweets from fans with 1 or 2 like, literally, that's what they're using as evidence, is fans are outraged by the comments of Tommy Dreamer. It's like, go fuck yourself. Earlier Friday, Fightful reported that Dreamer would not be at this weekend's set of Impact TV tapings in Nashville, Tennessee, saying that the staff was informed of his absence during a production meeting Friday, and the company has 3 days of taping, and Dreamer is a part of a creative team, occasionally still working matches. So yeah, Dreamer came under fire following Thursday's Dark Side of the Ring, which, by the way, okay, if we're going to go ahead and do a little bit of jumping around here, drew a whopping 150,000 viewers. Mid-season premiere for Dark Side of the Ring was well down. Showbiz Daily reports Dark Side of the Ring's Plane Ride from Hell episode drew 153,000 viewers on Thursday, September 16th. The show scored a .07 rating in the 18 to 49 demographic, placing it 81st among cable originals. And this is the most popular fucking program, rather, that Vice has. Yeah, they used to be cool and relevant. And in fact, it's even worse than that, because last night's Dark Side of the Ring broadcast had a lot of people talking today. The show dropped in the ratings from last episode back in June. Thursday's mid-season premiere drew 153,000 viewers and a .07 rating. Those numbers are down 36 and 37 for the viewers and demos from the numbers of the mid-season finale in June. In addition to that, the demo rating of the Plane Ride from Hell episode is the lowest since the May 27th episode that brought a .06. Don't know what that is, but hey, it's also the lowest episode, or the lowest viewed episode in the series' history. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about Vice. Nobody takes them seriously. And they're running out of unique stories to tell, so they needed to create some buzz off of this. That's the long and short of it, okay? So what did Dreamer have to say? Nothing terribly offensive, in my opinion. But hey, then again, I'm not a totally possessed leftist ideologue. So he came under fire for Thursday's Dark Side of the Ring episode that focused on the plane ride from hell, which a group of WWE wrestlers got heavily intoxicated during a Toyota 2002 international flight back to the United States, blah, blah, blah. A Dreamer who was on the flight defended Ric Flair. Yeah. Who was accused by flight attendant Heidi Doyle of exposing himself to her, pushing her up against the back door of the plane and putting her hand on his genitals. Did not claim that. She did not claim that in that episode, okay? Flair has denied the claims. A Dreamer said Flair is not going to impose by force any sexual stuff onto anybody. This is what he said, and this is what he got fucking canceled for. He's indefinitely suspended, okay? And because the fucking pro wrestling is the way that pro wrestling is, he's going to be persona non grata everywhere. By flight attendant Heidi Doyle of exposing her. Oh, himself, sorry. My mistake. He's just flaunting, styling, and profiling like the Ric Flair stuff, where everybody's going to laugh about it. Obviously, somebody took offense to it. That's what he said, okay? He later said Flair was being portrayed as a sexual predator, okay? Because we don't know the questions that these interviewers asked. We can only assume, and because workers are pretty well trained at being on the mic, they know how to take a prompt and spin it, right? Okay, and these were all seasoned vets that they interviewed. Okay, they had Rob Van Dam, as stoned as he was, wearing his own Ray-Bans, of course. Tommy Dreamer, Just Incredible, Jim Ross. You had all of these guys who are, veterans of the interview game. We don't know for sure what they were asked, but Dreamer also said about Ric Flair, it's a joke. It's a gag. Today, 1,000% inappropriate. He said, I've hung out with Ric Flair and I've never seen him force his will against anybody. I've never heard the claims, okay? Everybody knows he's a womanizer, okay? But never sexual assault, nothing like that. And yeah, even his fucking radio show, but we're going to see what they're going to do with this. On Fridays, Bustin' Open a Radio, where Dreamer is an occasional co-host. Host Dave LaGreca said they are taking the situation very seriously and don't condone any of the behavior displayed on the show. Why would you go back to a place that completely fucking sells you out? But I got some problems with this stuff too, because Heidi Doyle is already paid, or she's gotten paid, okay? There was a lawsuit filed in 2004, by the way, by Tarlin Capilano, okay? She wasn't even named in the fucking Vice piece anyways, but she filed the initial lawsuit that she convinced Heidi Doyle to join onto because she was already trying to move away from it, right? It was a lawsuit against WWE, which it was only a civil suit. There were no criminal charges filed. Again, if you guys seen any of my Trevor Bauer coverage, that immediately raises a red flag. Okay, no criminal charges, but you're filing a civil suit just seeking damages. Okay, cool. But here's an excerpt from that very lawsuit. In May of 2002, Flair, traditional spelling of his name Flair, but we'll say Flair for just, ease of pronunciation, and a group of other wrestlers, including Scott Hall, needed to refer to him as Razor Ramon, okay, and Virgil Runnels III, yes, Dustin Rhodes, aka Goldust, because when it's legal, you need your gimmick names in there. We're on a chartered flight back to the United States after a series of shows in Europe. They began drinking, and the situation quickly deteriorated. 2 flight attendants, Tarlin Capilano and Heidi Doyle, would compile their allegations into a 2004 lawsuit. Again, 2 years later, another big red flag. Chief among their chronicled misdeeds was Flair's sexual aggression. Okay, so what, in 2004, that was sexual aggression, sorry? He wore nothing but a jeweled cape, and the flight attendants say he flashed his nakedness, spinning his penis around. It's called the helicopter, kids. You should put that in there. That's the gimmick name. He separately grabbed each woman's hand and placed it on his crotch, and then forcibly detained, and restrained Doyle from leaving the back of the galley of the airplane while he sexually assaulted her. She did not make those claims in the video. Okay, I watched it twice. You guys can too. Anyways, other wrestlers on the flight passed out syringes to the flight attendants with instructions to dispose of them. It's not something that she said. They just remarked at the end of the flight, once everybody had left, there was blood and piss and vomit and garbage and everything you could possibly think of on the floor, including syringes. So perhaps that's the story that Capilano's telling, but that was not the one that Doyle told. Anyways, at other points during the flight, Hall licked Doyle's face. This was the story that she recounted about her interactions with Scott Hall. Okay, he told her he wanted to lick her pussy, and asked Capilano, my mistake, to suck his dick. I was just doing a DX thing. That's all right. Runnels, Goldust, by the way, advised Capilano that you and me are gonna fuck. What is that worth? I couldn't find the settlement worth, but I'm just thinking 20 years on, maybe somebody needs another payday because maybe it was, 6 or 7 digits split between attorneys and a couple of women. But hey, I don't know. That's just my interpretation of things. So what has happened with the Nature Boy at the end of this? Because we know what happened with Tommy Dreamer, who just had the audacity to say some really, measured things. It's like the boys wouldn't consider that to be terribly egregious. I've never seen him do anything like that before. He's not saying, oh, that didn't happen and that lady's a liar. And it's like, still, you can go out in there and say that if you can have fucking any inkling that he didn't do that, which you apparently have. So he got you know what, he lost his couple of gigs over that. But what about Ric Flair? Well, baseless accusations, shit that was settled 19 fucking years ago after he's been to rehab, had a fucking heart attack, and is trying to live out the rest of his life as some sort of a pseudo celebrity, finally breaking into the mainstream after a very, very long and arduous trip. Ric Flair ad campaign paused due to dark side controversy. Why? Fucking why? A national ad campaign featuring Ric Flair has been put on pause following Thursday's Dark Side of the Ring episode. PW insiders Mike Johnson reported Friday that the Car Shield campaigns featuring the WWE Hall of Famer are on pause, according to Intermedia, the advertising agency that handles the ad. In a statement to Johnson, they said, "We take these matters very seriously. As of right now, we are pausing the campaign, and we will do our due diligence." And find out that a civil suit was settled by the WWE and the women alleging damages, none of which has been corroborated. But okay, you want to do that? You want to cost somebody money? Whatever. What about Ric Flair, though? What was his statements at the end of this? Because, okay, we've heard from the parties alleging this stuff, and then if you watch the episode, okay, she seems pretty much a piece of it until Vice come back and try to probe her again for some more salacious content. They're sick and despicable people, and that's why I had that pointed up, and that's why I'll just continue to say. It's marked and it's stamped with the insignia of failure. The Vice are terrible people, okay? So what did Rick have to say about this? Well, he caught wind that the episode was going to air. He knew, according to, well, because Chris Jericho's fucking narrating it, and they're like this, so he had a heads up, okay? So they're going to be doing a piece on the plane ride from hell. You walking down the aisle, just flouting your nature boyness at ripe old age of 50-something, is probably going to be a subject of conversation. So he went on a podcast with Renee Paquette, my mistake. He had this to say. So, Ric Flair has spoken out about the allegations of sexual assault made against him, which have resurfaced in a new documentary, a new smear piece, but whatever. The former wrestler was on board the infamous plane ride from hell. That doesn't seem adequate, but okay, you just call him a former wrestler, whatever, which is explored in the new episode of Vice's documentary series, Dark Side of the Ring. In the episode, flight attendant Heidi Doyle alleges that Flair spun his penis at her and made her touch it. Prior to the episode's release, a 72-year-old Flair, so at the time he would have been 53. I don't know about you, but I'm not necessarily jonesing to see a naked 53-year-old, so could have been traumatizing. Said he knew the whole story. Of course, he was there, okay? Probably significantly drunk at the time, but he was there. He would know about it. Asked about the documentary on Renee Paquette's oral sessions, how appropriate. He said, "God, I've heard about it too. And just when things are going good for me." They really are, because he's finally becoming that beloved icon that he should have been a lot earlier in his career. He really should have had that Hulk Hogan fame, but no use crying about the past. Listen, you put me on your podcast after it airs, presumably. We'll see how this plays out, because I was there, and I don't care whose name I gotta drop if the heat falls on me. I know who was there, and what, and who, and what took place. I know the whole story. The story in question is now almost 20 years old. That's what gets to me. It's like, why are they trying to just ruin some old guys' lives? And then I remember, it's Vice. There is no level that these guys won't stoop to. So I don't know where this goes from here, and because this specific video has gone on for so long and it's been 2 takes, I hope the follow-up's much more pleasant, because just like JR said in the video, if I ever have to talk about the plane ride from hell again, it'll be too fucking soon. It's one of the most played out stories in professional wrestling, and it's an encapsulation of a bygone era, okay? The pills, they still hang around out there because it's still an arduous fucking schedule, but the guys are a lot better now. A lot more friendly, okay? There's not a lot of politicking going on, especially if you hear the stories backstage at AEW. It just seems like a fucking swell place to be, and everybody kind of just gets along, okay? There's a little gaming community. Okay, you have a couple of the old heads that just want to go out there and get fucking plastered, but that's not the overall makeup of the locker room, okay? So that's the reason why shit like that has never happened again, okay? JR took responsibility for it, and he fined and fired the appropriate people. Ric Flair skated because he's fucking Ric Flair, but I guess, you know what, hey, if you want to play devil's advocate to this, oh, he's finally getting what he had coming to him, karma's a bitch. Yeah, but this shit's already settled, so, again, this is another one of those cancel culture things where it's like, oh, okay, you already theoretically paid your debt to society by paying or settling the fucking lawsuit before it went to trial, and now you just gotta wait long enough for some fucking smear merchants to come out with a documentary that is very well edited, i.e. deceptively edited, because a lot of that stuff seems chronologically placed to be very inflammatory, as it were, and some of the questions you're not exactly privy to knowing, and whether or not they put a different reaction to a different question that was asked in order to fit a different narrative, I wouldn't put it out of Vice's purview per se. I think that they're kind of just slimy motherfuckers for the reasons we stated up top. But with that said, and with a tear in my eye, I've been waiting a fucking hour to do that. I've been Don Consuelo. Thank you very much for the gift of your time. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. I did that out of order. Take care, everyone.